What's up everyone, Lance Hedrick here, and today we're going to be discussing ghost burr grinders. Alright, so a lot of you may be watching this going, what the heck is a ghost burr? A lot of you probably haven't even heard of that term, and so I'm going to just talk briefly about what they are. So essentially, you want to think back to like corn grinders or these different spices and herb grinders. What you have are these little blocks of blades, I guess you could say, as you can see from this view right here. But it's an old technology, something that's been used for a long, long time in order to grind up other types of things. When Orphan Espresso released their Apex hand grinder, which has ghost teeth in it, the founder commented on it, talking about how the idea with these burrs is so that the beans get cut into small pieces, but then if they're aligned well, they kind of just fall out of the burrs as opposed to maintaining their space in there, going longer and longer through the burr teeth of typical burrs and through a smaller and smaller aperture, if that makes sense, right? So instead of the grounds getting caught in the different stages of teeth in a burr grinder, they will just kind of get cut and fall out through the gaps as long as the two faces are aligned well. So you have the same thing kind of on the inside. These two get forced together, and when the beans fall through, the same idea happens with the centripetal force, gets shoved out of the grinder and into your dose cup. Boom, caught it. So obviously, these burrs cannot grind for espresso. You cannot have close enough proximity with those burrs in order to create particle sizes small enough to allow for pressure to get up to even 3, 4, 5 bars. This is for filter coffee only, cupping and filter. Now, the most famous and the original of these grinders is this one right here, the Fuji Royale 220, okay? So the Fuji Royale 220 is kind of the original of these. It's about 220 watts and rotates at an RPM that I measured at about 3,870. So a very high RPM, which is not ideal, but that's what we're working with in this original. Now I have to thank my friend Boris up at Hatch Coffee for letting me borrow this for this video. Now this grinder is difficult to find, and when you find it, it's about 7, 8, even maybe even $900 US. So it's not cheap. Therefore, there is a, I guess you could say, a copycat by Shioleo that you can find online for about 1/3 the price. And I was curious if for 1/3 of the price we could maintain that same quality that comes out of the Fuji. So as you see here, one of the big difference right off the bat that you can see is the Fuji is cast burrs. As you can see, it's cast steel. Listen, you can hear the when I scratch it. And the Shioleo are machined, right? Much more smooth, and you see the metal shining, right? So these are the two burrs that you have. You have the cast and then you have the machined. All right, so that's one big difference, obviously, but the pattern is very similar. There seems to be more pointy edges on the Shioleo than on the cast. You have more of a squared off tip. All right, so as you can see, the tips are kind of squared off on the Fuji, but on the Shioleo, other than the outer edge, they're all kind of pointy. So there are some obvious differences there, but they're the same diameter, about 75 millimeters. And they have the same idea going on. All right, so let's put this back in. So I wanted to see if this, at a fraction of the cost, stacked up to this, because obviously this is quite expensive, and for a filter-only grinder, that's quite an investment if you're wanting to make unique profiles. So I bought the Shioleo. It's only about $150 US online. I bought it because it looks nice. It's pretty substantial. It has a 200-watt motor, so very comparable to the 220 in this, and it actually runs at a lower RPM, at about 3,300 RPM that I measured it at. So I wanted to grab this, see if it stacked up. I did a lot of testing, and I will go ahead and do another one here for you today. But grinding at the same grind size, I'm just going to go ahead and spoil it for those who don't care to watch me taste coffee. But at the same grind size, consistently, with the same drawdown time and everything, the Fuji had almost a 2% extraction increase, or gap between it and the Shioleo. It was consistently 2% higher on extraction and consistently tasted a lot better. I finally went coarser and coarser and coarser on the Fuji to lessen the extraction yield so that we had a same extraction here. And even when I did that, the Fuji still tasted better. So I was very, what was funny is when I was doing the testing, I was messaging a friend of mine who helped me gather some of this data, Dennis Sabu, now out in Norway. But I was chatting with him one night and told him that I was so stoked because the Shioleo was tasting a lot better and it was extracting higher and I couldn't understand it. And then I realized I had switched up the grinders and was really sad when I found out that, in fact, it was nowhere near as good. But I'm going to go ahead and just do it live so you can see how pretty obvious the difference is. I'll measure them, but I'm going to grind them at the same grind size. And I'm going to brew them both with a V60, and then I will taste them, refract them, and share those results with you here. But yeah, so we're going to go and take a look at that, and then I'm going to show you kind of a hack you can do to improve both grinders right after that. So let's get those brews going. And actually, before brewing, I do want to note a couple of differences. The Fuji can get much, much finer, and which I suspect is because of those squared off tops, whereas on the Shioleo, they're more pointy. So there's more space for bigger grounds to get by with those pointy tips, whereas on this one, because they're flat, it can get them a little coarser. So I have them to the same grind size, but this one, the Shioleo, is right off chirp. So if you listen, if I go one click finer, we're at chirp, all right? So, and to match, I'm at number 5 on the Fuji, but I can go all the way down before I hit chirp, which I have it set at 2. I don't know why, don't ask, but it matches at 5. So you hear how many clicks before it hits chirp. So the Fuji can get a lot finer, so I have to go a little coarser than what would be ideal for the Fuji in order to match the Shioleo, but this is fine enough to do V60's Cletus single brews on this. But anyway, I wanted to address that. All right, so I just brewed a V60 of each. I did it as you saw, actually we'll show it right now. This is the Fuji grind setting, as you can see right there. And this is the Shioleo. But yeah, so the grind size is optically as similar as possible, and I also had the drain time identical. It was within 3 seconds of each other. But I refracted both of them, and it is just shocking how much higher the Fuji extracts than the Shioleo. It's shocking. This one came out at 22.9% extraction, doing a very simple recipe: 15 grams of coffee, 255 grams of water. And then this one came out at a measly 18.7%. So this one was actually over 4% different, with as close of a grind size similarity as I could get. Just, I don't understand that. Same water temperature, same everything. And this one just way, way, way higher extraction. Doesn't really make much sense to me, but anyway, so what we're gonna do now is I have 3 cups, and on one of them, this one, there's a piece of tape on the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Jason come on, and he's going to take one of them, I don't know which one, and he's going to pour it in 2, all right? And then on the other one, he's going to take the other coffee and pour the one with tape on the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to taste, and I'm going to figure out which one I think tastes the best, or which 2 I think taste the best, whatever it is, and we'll figure out if I was right or wrong based off of that. But if I get this wrong, I'm lame. All right. So we're gonna, I guess I don't need to cover my ears because he's just pouring and I won't know which one he's using. So I'm just gonna sit here and talk. And as usual, I'm gonna be looking at the coffee stuff. There's a nice French press. Oh, that's a fun little glass to drink from, I guess. We got this nice little hopper lid over here. Little Colito wave up here. And oh, Prismo attachment, an AeroPress stir stick. Oh, we have a Mellow Drip. Shout out to Ray Murakawa. Love Ray. All right, I've got my trusty spoon. Let's go ahead and take a sip. All right, take one more sip. All right, so off those tastes, these 2 taste a little bit more thin and a little bit more herbal, herbaceous. This one tastes a little more full, a little bit more thick, a little more concentrated, and a little and sweeter. So let's go ahead and see if this one is the one with tape on it, and then we'll confirm to see what's going on with it. All right, so this does have tape on it. So this is the odd one out. The question is this the Fuji and the Funyuns? What is it, Jason? Fuji! Fuji and Funyuns, Seth Galifianakis. If anyone picks that up, say it in the comments below. Anyway, so The Fuji extracts much higher. It has a much cleaner palette on it. I just don't understand why it does that. Anyway, what I want to show now is I'm going to show you how you can control the RPM, because I think one of the reasons why, even with really nice coffees, there's an astringency with Ghost Burrs that I found out, at least with these. I suspect it's from the really incredibly high RPM. Like over 3,000 is crazy high. When you think about other grinders, like the Eureka Specialita, that's 1350. The Brazza Vario is 1350. The Brazza Forte is 1950. The Bentwood is 1400. The range on the Weber EG1 is like 100 to 1400. So you have, in all these grinders, there's this theme of sub 2000, sub 1500 on most. The niche is 330. The, how many of these can I call off the top of my head? This Brazza Sette is 550. The fellow Ode is 1400. So anyway, all of these are quite low in comparison, and there is conjecture that you have, or speculation that you have much higher fines production at higher RPM. So I'm going to show you a way to lessen the RPM quite easily when you have an AC motor that is like the ones in here. So what you need is a speed controller, which I discuss in my video right here on budget grinders. But this is a very simple, really cheap thing you can buy where you can plug in your grinder into this and then plug this into an outlet. You can control the speed. So we're going to just measure the speed on this. So I'm going to take the Fuji plug it straight into here, and then I'm going to plug the speed controller into there. Now, of course, you can also do other types of modifications in order to control the speed, but this is what we're going to do today. In fact, I'm going to unplug this as I open this up to be safe. I also love thumb screws when I don't have to use a screwdriver. So nice. All right, so that pops right off. You take off that front burr, bada bing, bada boom. Now I'm going to get my RPM reader, my tachometer. Right there. Here is my tachometer. So I'm going to take this. I'm going to take a little piece of this. There we are. All right. Now all I got to do is take a little snip of this, and I'm going to put it onto the auger right there, and we're going to turn that bad boy on, and with my cool little laser, I'm going to be able to read the speed. And all right, so I have my little piece of tape on here. Now I'm going to turn this on at full speed, and we're going to see what the test is. And then on this, I'm going to switch over and go as low as possible. So when I have the switch over here, it's just going full speed. When I switch it over to here, I'm going to have it at the lowest setting, and we're going to see how low we can get the RPM. All right. So here we are. I'm going to start it. I'm testing it. And it's reading 3860. All right. 3860 is what we read. Now I'm going to flip it over to the lowest setting possible. Now we're going to read it on the slowest setting. I've already changed the knob all the way down, so let's see what this is at. All right, we're at 1393. So you were able to successfully get it from around 3,800 RPM to around 1,400 using the router speed controller. And now the same thing happens with the Shioleo. You're able to get it down all the way to around 1,400. Actually, a little bit less. You're able to get this around 1,200 RPM, which it would make sense because the starting RPM is a lot lower than the Fuji starting at around 3,800. This one was at 3,200. So there is a way to get the RPM lower, which does verifiably produce less fines, at least in my testing it has. But there is still a decent amount of fines production, but I have found that you get really consistent sizes at that particle size you're wanting to come out. So you get really nice, really pretty grounds just with some fines production. Now there is a way to rid of those fines. And what you can do is you can get one of these little guys, you can grind straight into it, you can shake it up, and through the mesh, fines will be discarded, and then you're able to just pour straight out of here with less fines. Anyway, that's kind of the idea of the Ghost Burrs. It makes a really unique cup. I would probably pit it against something like let's see. I would put it against something like the version 1 Ode burrs. So something that has a pretty consistent profile, distribution profile as far as the larger particles go. It does produce some fines, but as I said, if you lower the RPM using something like this, you can get 10, 12 bucks. I'll link the one I got down below. And it only works with AC, so don't think if you have a DC machine it's going to work on that. This is an AC speed controller. Anyway, that's kind of the gist of the Ghost Burrs. If you are looking at the Shioleo, just know you're going to leave a lot on the table. In this case, spending more for the grinder is truly worth it. You're going to get much higher extractions, much more even extractions, with a lot more consistent cups from cup to cup. It's going to be a lot sweeter, and they have those cast burrs on it, which is really nice. I guess the final thing I kind of wanted to show is that these burrs tend to be advertised as 80 millimeters. So don't think that you can buy this and throw 80 millimeter burrs in it. These burrs are a lot thinner. So first off, you wouldn't be able to throw normal burrs in it, specifically based off of the thickness. But I wanted to show exactly what size these are, which I said earlier they're 75 millimeters, but they don't say that. So they're advertised as 80, and I wanted to kind of just show what these bad boys actually are. So I've locked my calipers. Let me lock these down. Boom. I've locked my calipers on here. As you can see, whoop, whoop. So you can see on my digital readout, it's just shy of 76. So just know when buying these that you're not getting 80 millimeters, you're getting about 75, and they are roughly the same size. In fact, the Fuji is just a little bit bigger burrs, sitting at 77, right at 77 millimeters. So anyway, if you were considering getting a Ghost burr grinder and you were trying to do a much cheaper version, just know you're sacrificing a ton of quality. And in fact, I would say a lot of these cheap hand grinders are going to be producing better cups than this Shioleo does. The Fuji is the real deal. I've really enjoyed the cups I've gotten off from it. Is it going to change my daily grinder from a fellow with SSP multi-purpose burrs to this? No. I think the cast burrs from SSP are better than this as well, but it does produce a really unique profile. It's something that if you have, or if you are wanting something that produces really high extractions, this does a great job. As I said, you can go even finer than what we were doing. I achieved almost a 23% extraction on a simple 2-pore V60. So just know this can really yeet extractions if you're on those online forums. Yeah, it's a really fun grinder. So let me know your thoughts below. Have you ever seen a Ghost burr grinder? If not, what do you think about it? Is this something that you've considered getting? Have you ever seen the Apex from Orphan Espresso? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Outside of that, please make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe if you haven't already, turn on the notifications, check out my Patreon, you know the spiel. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you brew something tasty, and cheers.